A vast city lies hidden beneath the Amazon rainforest. This is not a legend, but a fact revealed by lasers from the sky. For centuries, we believed the Amazon was a near-empty wilderness, untouched by large civilizations. That story is now being rewritten. By the end of this video, you will understand how a technological marvel uncovered a lost world, and why this changes everything about ancient history. What kind of society could build a metropolis in the jungle, and why did it vanish? The answers force us to rethink humanity's past. What does a forgotten city tell you about the stories we still believe? The jungle itself seemed to guard its secrets well. This idea of the Amazon as a pristine, empty wilderness is a story we have told ourselves for generations. It was often called a green desert, a place so challenging and nutrient-poor that only small, scattered groups could survive there by constantly moving. This narrative did not come from nowhere. Early European explorers, facing immense hardship and illness, saw a landscape that appeared hostile to the kind of large, settled civilizations they knew. Their accounts, written from a place of struggle, shaped our understanding for centuries. They described a world of endless trees and river, but not of stone monuments or grand plazas. So the myth of the untouched Amazon took root in textbooks and popular imagination. It was a convenient story, in a way, suggesting that these lands were waiting, empty, for outside influence. But woven through this official history were other threads, far older and more persistent. Local communities passed down stories of a different past. Legends spoke of places like El Dorado, a city of gold, or the Grand Kingdom of Paititi. For a long time, these were dismissed as mere fantasy, romantic tales spun from wishful thinking. Yet, every so often, an archaeologist would find a strangely large mound of earth, or a farmer would uncover fragments of intricate pottery far from any known village. These were tantalizing clues, whispers of a scale of life that the green desert theory could not explain. They created a perfect historical mystery, a conflict between what was officially believed and what the land itself seemed to quietly suggest. The stage was set, but the tools to see the truth were still missing. We needed a way to look past the canopy, to see the forest for what it truly was, not just what it appeared to be. The tool that finally cracked the jungle's code was not a shovel or a machete, but a laser fired from an airplane. It is called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. At its heart, the concept is beautifully simple. Imagine a plane flying a precise grid pattern high above the forest canopy. Mounted on its belly is a device that acts like an ultra-fast, ultra-precise flashlight. It doesn't shine a single beam, however. It fires millions of individual laser pulses every single second down toward the Earth. Each pulse is a tiny packet of light, and when it hits something, whether it is the very top of a 200-foot-tall tree or a single leaf halfway down, a fraction of that light bounces straight back up to a sensor on the aircraft. The system measures with incredible accuracy how long that round trip took for every single pulse. Since we know the speed of light is constant, that time measurement translates directly into a distance. Now picture this happening millions of times per second. The result is a colossal, swirling cloud of data points, each one a precise coordinate in three-dimensional space. This is where the magic happens. Powerful computers then sort this point cloud, separating the returns from the vegetation from the returns that finally made it all the way to the solid ground. When you digitally filter out all the points from the trees and vines, what you are left with is a pristine, millimeter-accurate map of the Earth's bare surface, a landscape revealed for the first time in centuries. It is, in every sense, an X-ray for the terrain. For archaeologists, this is nothing short of revolutionary. Before LiDAR, surveying a dense forest meant years of grueling, dangerous groundwork, cutting paths through thick undergrowth, often missing the larger picture entirely. A massive earthen pyramid could look like just another hill when you are standing on it, shrouded in roots and trees. LiDAR gives them the God's eye view. It allows researchers to see the human fingerprint on the land at a scale that was previously impossible, revealing geometric patterns, causeways, reservoirs, and plazas that are completely invisible from the ground. This technology became the key that would unlock a door we did not even fully know was there, turning the whispers of legend into a map of stunning reality. The first scans were targeted at a specific region in Bolivia, an area already whispering with clues. Scattered across the landscape were mysterious earthworks, shallow trenches dug into the soil forming geometric shapes like circles and squares, known as geoglyphs. For years, these were seen as isolated ceremonial sites, curious but disconnected artifacts. The LiDAR plane flew its grid, its lasers piercing the canopy, and the raw data was sent for processing. When the researchers first saw the images render on their screens, the air must have gone still. They were not looking at a few more isolated shapes. What materialized before them was an astonishing, sprawling tapestry of human design. The screen displayed a vast network of precise geometric forms, not just scattered, but linked by straight, raised causeways that ran for miles. There were concentric circles, perfect squares, octagons, and platforms, all arranged with clear intention across a landscape they had thought was largely empty. This was not a collection of sites. It was the unmistakable blueprint of a planned settlement, a complex urban layout on a scale that defied every assumption about the region. In that moment, data points transformed into a revelation. The emotional impact was profound, a dizzying mix of shock and awe. Intellectually, it was a paradigm-shattering event. They were no longer looking at a few curious earthworks. They were staring at the ghost of a metropolis. That first glimpse was a key turning a lock, opening a door onto a hidden world, and it immediately raised a pressing, thrilling question. If this is what one small, targeted scan revealed, what else was waiting unseen beneath the endless green? The maps that came back were not just images, they were a census of a ghost city. Analysis revealed this was not one town or even a cluster of villages. It was a continuous, integrated urban landscape spanning an area well over 400 square kilometers. To grasp that scale, picture an ancient metropolis the size of modern-day Berlin or Los Angeles, but hidden entirely beneath a living rainforest. The LiDAR data painted a picture of breathtaking intentionality. Straight, raised causeways, like ancient highways, ran for dozens of miles in perfect lines, connecting distinct districts. These were not meandering paths. They were engineered roads, elevating travel above the seasonal floods and linking everything together with clear purpose. They connected residential areas, marked by countless small mounds where family homes once stood, to large, flat ceremonial platforms and enormous, geometrically perfect reservoirs. The entire layout spoke of a society that did not simply live in the jungle, but had mastered it. They reshaped the earth itself on a colossal scale, moving millions of tons of soil to create this living, functional network. This was landscape engineering on a par with the great civilizations of the ancient world. The sheer density of the construction suggests a population that could have numbered in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even crossing into the millions. This single visualization shatters the old idea of the Amazon as a green desert. It forces a profound reimagining. This was not a sparse scattering of hunter-gatherers, but a complex, coordinated, and likely hierarchical society. They possessed the knowledge to manage water, food, and community across an immense urban expanse. The sophistication required to plan and maintain such a place speaks of architects, administrators, and a shared vision that held for generations. So who were these master builders of the Amazon, and what kind of world did they create within their engineered paradise? The builders of this hidden metropolis finally have a name, emerging from the shadows of prehistory. They are known as the Casarabe culture, a people who made the Anos de Mojos region their home for nearly 1,000 years, from roughly 500 to 1400 AD. Before the laser scans, our knowledge of them was frustratingly fragmented, pieced together from scattered pottery shards and a handful of partially excavated mounds. They were a footnote, a minor culture in a vast, empty narrative. The LiDAR maps changed all of that in an instant, transforming a footnote into the authors of one of the most dramatic urban stories in the ancient Americas. So what do we know about these master architects? Their material culture, primarily seen in their pottery, shows a society with skill and artistry, creating vessels that were both functional and decorated with intricate designs. But their true genius was not just in what they made with their hands, but in what they built with their land. The Casarabe did not see the Amazon's seasonal floods as a catastrophe to be endured. They saw it as a rhythm to be harnessed. Their entire civilization was built on a principle of symbiotic engineering. Instead of trying to drain the wetlands, they sculpted them. They constructed vast, raised agricultural fields, like long, fertile islands lifting crops above the waterline. They dug enormous, geometric reservoirs to capture and store water for the dry seasons, turning a potential threat into a reliable resource. A network of canals and causeways managed the flow of water, people, and goods, connecting their raised residential platforms, their ceremonial centers, and their farmlands into a single, living system. This was not fighting the jungle. This was a conversation with it, a centuries-long project of landscape architecture on a staggering scale. The Casarabe emerged not as primitive survivors in a green desert, but as brilliant hydrological engineers and urban planners. Their story redefines resilience. It is a testament to human ingenuity, showing how a society can flourish not by conquering nature, but by learning its language and writing their own civilization into the very soil. These causeways are the skeleton of the lost city. The LiDAR maps show them not as wandering footpaths, but as long, ruler-straight arteries of packed earth, some raised over 6 meters high and stretching for more than 20 kilometers without a single bend. To build just one of these monumental roads required moving a staggering volume of soil all by hand through dense jungle. This was not a community project for a single village. This scale of labor implies a society with remarkable social cohesion, capable of organizing thousands of people toward a common, long-term vision. These were formal roads, the ancient equivalent of interstate highways, designed to connect ceremonial centers, residential districts, and farmlands into a single, integrated system. They elevated travel above the seasonal floods, ensuring that movement and trade could continue year-round. When you look at the map, you see a network that feels eerily modern in its logic, reminiscent of the purpose-built roads of the Roman Empire that bound a vast territory together. The causeways tell us the Casarabe were not just living in the landscape, they were actively structuring it, imposing a human order of connection and efficiency upon the wild. But a road network is only one part of the story. Running alongside and intersecting these raised highways was another, equally brilliant system, one that dealt with the jungle's most abundant resource, water. The Casarabe were master hydraulic engineers. They excavated vast geometric reservoirs, some spanning hundreds of meters, to capture and store rainwater. They dug intricate networks of canals that channeled water from these reservoirs to their raised agricultural fields, and likely provided routes for canoe-based transportation. This was a managed circulatory system for the entire city. Think of the ancient canals of Mesopotamia that turned desert into fertile crescent. But here the goal was almost the opposite, to rationally distribute and control an overabundance of water in a rainforest. This dual infrastructure of causeways and canals created a symbiotic urban environment. The roads moved people and goods across the land, while the canals moved water and goods through it. Together, they transformed a challenging, flood-prone wetland into a predictable, productive, and sustainable home. This planned landscape is a testament to a deep, generational understanding of the environment. It reveals a civilization that achieved a delicate balance, creating a functional metropolis not by fighting the Amazon, but by weaving their city directly into its fabric. A metropolis of hundreds of thousands cannot survive on foraging alone. The true engine of this civilization lay not in its monuments, but in its fields. The LiDAR maps reveal a stunning agricultural landscape, a vast patchwork of geometric shapes etched into the earth. These are raised fields, a brilliant feat of ancient bioengineering. The Casarabe did not simply find fertile land, they created it. In the seasonally flooded savannas, they built up long, rectangular platforms of soil, lifting the planting surface above the waterline. These were not small garden plots. They formed extensive, organized grids, covering square kilometers in a deliberate, productive pattern. Each field was essentially an artificial island of rich, cultivable earth. But how did they make the notoriously poor rainforest soil so fruitful? The secret was in the canals. The dirt dug to create the fields also formed a network of surrounding waterways. These canals served multiple, ingenious purposes. They drained excess water away from the crops during the rainy season. They provided irrigation channels during drier periods. And crucially, they became nutrient traps. Aquatic plants would grow in the canals, and sediment rich in organic matter would settle. Periodically, this nutrient-dense muck would be scooped from the canal bottoms and piled onto the raised fields, constantly replenishing and fertilizing the soil in a sustainable cycle. This was a closed-loop system that turned a nutrient-poor environment into a perpetual breadbasket. On these fertile platforms, the Casarabe likely cultivated a diverse array of crops. Staple foods like manioc, a hardy root vegetable, would have provided carbohydrates. They probably grew maize, squash, beans, and fruits, creating a balanced and reliable diet. This agricultural system was the cornerstone of everything. It allowed for food surpluses, which in turn freed people from the constant daily hunt for sustenance. That surplus labor could then be directed toward grand communal projects, building those immense causeways, reservoirs, and ceremonial platforms. The city was literally fed by its own engineered landscape. This transforms our understanding of their relationship with the environment. They were not passive inhabitants of a challenging world. They were active cultivators, soil scientists, and landscape architects who shaped a wetland into a garden of astonishing productivity. Their civilization was rooted, quite literally, in the ground they had so skillfully enriched. Rising above the flat, engineered landscape were the anchors of Casarabe life. Scattered at key intersections where multiple causeways met like ancient city streets, the LiDAR maps revealed enormous earthen platforms and vast, open plazas. These were not random features. They were the ceremonial and civic centers, the undeniable focal points of the entire urban network. Some of these platform mounds are staggering in scale, constructed to heights of over 20 meters. To visualize that, picture a man-made hill as tall as a 6-story building, built entirely by hand, basketful of earth by basketful of earth. The cross-sectional views from the laser data show these were not simple piles of dirt, but carefully layered and shaped structures with broad, flat summits. Surrounding them are expansive plazas, enormous leveled spaces cleared and maintained, some large enough to hold thousands of people. Their strategic placement tells a story of intentional design. They were the hubs, the central nodes where the long, straight roads of this civilization all converged. So what happened in these spaces? While we cannot hear the echoes of their gatherings, the architecture itself suggests their purpose. The towering platforms likely served as stages for community-wide events. They could have been the setting for religious ceremonies, where spiritual leaders connected with the forces of nature the Casarabe so expertly managed. They might have been the platforms from which political authority was displayed and community decisions were announced to the assembled populace. The open plazas below were the gathering grounds. These cleared areas could have hosted vibrant markets for trade, festivals that celebrated the harvest, or public rituals that bound the community together. Their sheer size suggests events of major social importance, moments where a dispersed population came together to reaffirm a shared identity. There is also a strong possibility these centers held astronomical significance. The precise orientation of some structures, a common feature in ancient cultures, could have been used to track solstices or celestial events, tying the rhythm of their society to the cycles of the sky above the canopy. These centers were more than just buildings. They were the beating heart of the Megalopolis. In a society spread across hundreds of square kilometers, these hubs provided the essential spaces where spiritual life, social order, and cultural memory were collectively forged. They transformed a network of roads and fields into a true community, offering a shared place for meaning, authority, and connection. This intricate urban fabric, however, presents its own profound puzzle. A civilization capable of such coordination and long-term planning does not simply fade away without a trace. What force, then, could have caused the lights of this vast metropolis to go out? The very shape of the city begins to whisper secrets about the society that built it. Beyond the roads and fields, the LiDAR maps reveal subtle but powerful clues etched into the landscape, hints of a social world with its own structures of power, protection, and daily life. Take a closer look at some of the largest central settlements. Surrounding them, the scans often show not one, but multiple rings of what appear to be deep trenches or low embankments, arranged in concentric circles around the central platforms. These are not irrigation canals. Their placement and form suggest something else entirely, a system of defensive earthworks. A single moat might mark a boundary, but multiple, layered rings speak to a concept of graduated defense, a way to slow down or deter any potential approach. This implies that the Casarabe, for all their ingenuity, were not living in an untroubled paradise. The need for such elaborate fortifications around their most important centers points to a world where conflict, or at least the threat of it, was a reality they planned for. It suggests they valued what they had built enough to protect it, and that they organized their community not just for celebration and harvest, but also for collective security. This shifts our perception from a purely peaceful, isolated utopia to a more complex, realistic picture of an ancient society navigating the challenges of its time. The city's blueprint reveals a clear social architecture. The settlements are not all the same size. The LiDAR data shows a distinct hierarchy, a pyramid of places. At the base are hundreds, perhaps thousands, of small residential mounds, each likely supporting a single family home. These cluster together, forming neighborhoods. These neighborhoods, in turn, connect via those straight causeways to larger, subsidiary centers with modest platforms. And all roads ultimately lead to the grandest sites, those immense platform mounds surrounded by vast plazas and those concentric defensive rings. This graduated scale is a classic archaeological indicator of social stratification. It strongly implies a society with differing levels of status, influence, and power. The people living on the small residential mounds were likely farmers, artisans, and laborers, the lifeblood of the city who worked the raised fields and built the earthworks. The administrators, planners, and spiritual leaders, those who coordinated this vast enterprise, probably resided in or governed from the larger centers. And at the apex, the grandest platforms likely served as the seats of ultimate authority, whether religious, political, or both. The ability to mobilize the labor for such projects and the clear distinction in living and ceremonial spaces points to a centralized leadership capable of organizing and directing the population. So what was daily life like in this engineered world? While we cannot know the details, the city's design lets us infer the rhythm of existence. For most people, life would have revolved around the agricultural cycle, tending the fertile raised fields and maintaining the canals. Social bonds were forged in the residential clusters and along the causeways traveled daily. Community identity was reinforced in the plazas during markets and festivals. And overarching it all was a shared belief system and a recognized hierarchy that provided order and purpose. The defensive rings tell us safety was a communal concern, likely managed by that same leadership. This was not an egalitarian village. It was a complex, coordinated civilization with specialized roles, a chain of command, and a shared vision that held for centuries. The city was not just a collection of buildings, but a physical manifestation of a social contract, an agreement on how to live together and what to value. This understanding makes their ultimate disappearance not just a historical event, but a deeply human mystery. If their society was so resilient, so brilliantly adapted, what could possibly have caused such a thoroughly integrated world to come undone? The sheer number of residential mounds tells a story of its own. Scattered across the LiDAR maps, visible once the digital canopy is stripped away, are countless small, raised platforms. Each one is not a natural hill, but a carefully constructed earthen foundation, a place where a family home once stood. To an archaeologist, these are not just shapes on a map, they are a direct census record from the past. One of the primary methods for estimating the population of an ancient site like this begins with a simple yet painstaking act counting. Researchers digitally tag each visible residential platform within the scanned area. But a single mound does not equal a single person. To translate structure into population, archaeologists use comparative data and logical multipliers. They draw from studies of similar, better understood indigenous Amazonian societies, both historical and modern, to estimate how many people might have lived in a typical household dwelling built on such a platform. This number can vary, but it often falls between 5 and 10 individuals per family unit. By multiplying the total count of platforms by this household estimate, they arrive at a preliminary, minimum figure for how many people the city's housing could have supported at its peak. The initial counts from these Casarabe scans run into the many thousands. Even using a conservative multiplier, the math quickly points toward a population in the tens of thousands for the fully connected urban area. This method, however, only tells part of the tale. A city cannot exist on houses alone, it must be fed. This is where the second, crucial line of evidence comes into play, the agricultural landscape. The vast grids of raised fields are not just impressive engineering, they are a quantifiable source of calories. Researchers can calculate the total cultivable area created by these fields. Using known yields for traditional Amazonian crops like manioc, they can then estimate the total annual food production this engineered landscape was capable of generating. The next step is to determine how many people that bounty could have sustained based on average dietary needs. The results from these agricultural calculations are staggering. The food output potential of the Casarabe fields is enormous, easily capable of supporting a very large sedentary population. When the evidence from the residential platforms is combined with the evidence from the agricultural surplus, a compelling picture emerges. The emerging consensus among researchers studying this data is that this was not a town of a few thousand. We are almost certainly looking at a society numbering in the tens of thousands, with some scholars suggesting the interconnected network may have sustained a population approaching or even exceeding 100,000 people at its height. To grasp the scale, imagine an ancient urban community rivaling the size of major European cities of the same era, like London or Paris. This single figure, this revised headcount of history, forces a complete rewrite of the regional story. It definitively shatters the old paradigm of the Amazon's limited carrying capacity. The land was not a green desert incapable of supporting complexity. It was a fertile canvas, and the Casarabe knew exactly how to paint upon it to sustain a metropolis. Their disappearance, therefore, becomes an even more profound mystery. What could cause such a vast, well-fed, and brilliantly organized society to vanish, leaving its bones to be swallowed by the very forest it had mastered for so long? The long, straight causeways were not just local streets, they were the arteries of a much larger body. A civilization of this scale and sophistication could not have thrived in a vacuum. Those raised roads, extending for dozens of miles in perfect lines, point toward a world of movement and connection that reached far beyond the city's own farmlands. They were built for purpose, and one of those purposes was almost certainly trade. The Casarabe, masterful as they were, did not have access to every resource within their own engineered domain. To sustain their society and fuel its growth, they needed to connect. Imagine a trader from a distant village arriving by canoe at the edge of the Casarabe world. They would transfer their goods to a causeway, a dry, reliable road that led straight into the heart of the Megalopolis. What might they have been carrying? The exchange likely flowed with practical and precious items, exotic stones for making tools and ornaments, perhaps obsidian from volcanic highlands far to the west, could have traveled these routes. Colorful feathers from macaws and parrots, highly valued for ceremonial regalia, would have been a vibrant commodity. Marine shells from the Pacific coast or the Caribbean, traded hand over hand across the continent, could have ended up here, transformed into beads and jewelry that spoke of distant shores. And the Casarabe had plenty to offer in return. Their most famous product was likely their pottery, vessels of distinctive style and technical skill that have been found scattered across the region. But their greatest export might have been knowledge itself, the agricultural techniques and hydrological engineering that made life on such a scale possible. This suggests the Amazon basin was not a silent, empty space between great civilizations. It was likely a buzzing network of interaction, with the Casarabe metropolis acting as a powerful central hub. Goods, people, and ideas would have converged here, making its grand plazas not just sites for ritual, but also vibrant marketplaces where languages mixed and cultures brushed against one another. This interconnectedness raises a thrilling possibility. The influence of the Casarabe and their connections may have stretched even farther than the rainforest. To the west, rising into the clouds, were the Andes, home to the mighty Inca Empire and the complex societies that preceded it. While no direct road linked these worlds, trade networks are famous for their indirect branching paths. It is not hard to envision prized Amazonian goods, like those brilliant feathers or rare medicinal plants, finding their way up mountain trails to Andean elites. In return, concepts of astronomy, metalworking, or political organization could have trickled down. The Megalopolis, therefore, begins to look less like an isolated wonder and more like a critical piece in a vast continental puzzle. It forces us to redraw the map of the ancient Americas, not as separate, isolated zones, but as a tapestry of interwoven threads, with the Amazon as a central, beating heart of innovation and exchange. This vision of a connected world makes the civilization's eventual silence even more perplexing. If they were so integrated, so central to a web of relationships, what could have severed all those threads at once? Around 1400 AD, the great city fell silent. The intricate network of causeways, once pulsing with life, grew still. The vast plazas no longer echoed with ceremony, and the raised fields slowly ceased their careful cycles of planting and harvest. The Casarabe culture, which had flourished for nearly a millennium, entered a period of profound decline that culminated in the complete abandonment of their engineered world. The jungle, patient and relentless, began its long work of reclamation. its roots and vines slowly burying the grandest human achievement the Amazon had ever known. The why of this collapse is one of history's most haunting puzzles. What force or combination of forces could unravel a society so brilliantly adapted to its environment? The leading theories point not to a single cataclysm, but to a cascade of challenges that may have overwhelmed even their remarkable resilience. One compelling suspect is climate. Around this time, paleoclimatologists have identified evidence of a significant shift in regional weather patterns. The reliable rhythms of wet and dry seasons that the Casarabe's entire hydraulic system was designed to manage may have begun to falter. What if the rains became too intense for too long, causing floods that overtopped their canals and drowned their fields? Or conversely, what if prolonged droughts desiccated their reservoirs and left their crops to wither? Their civilization was a masterpiece of environmental balance, but it was built for a specific climate. A sustained shift outside those parameters could have destabilized the very foundation of their food security and social order. Another, darker possibility arrives with the distant echo of European sails. While Spanish and Portuguese colonists would not physically reach this inland region for over a century, their germs traveled far ahead of them. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which indigenous Americans had no immunity, spread like wildfire along trade networks. It is a tragic and well-documented pattern across the Americas, where populations were sometimes reduced by 90% or more before a single European face was ever seen. Could a series of such devastating epidemics have swept through the densely populated Casarabe network? A society can lose its knowledge, its leadership, and its labor force in a terrifyingly short time when faced with such invisible devastation. The social fabric, woven so tightly across generations, could have simply unraveled. There is also the potential for internal strain. Maintaining such a vast, coordinated system required immense social cohesion and a centralized authority capable of organizing labor and distributing resources. What if that authority began to fail? Competition between different centers, challenges to leadership, or growing inequality could have fractured the shared vision that held the metropolis together. If trust in the system broke down, the collective will to maintain those miles of canals and causeways might have dissolved. The people, facing hardship, could have gradually dispersed back into smaller, more independent forest communities, abandoning the grand urban experiment. The truth, as it often is with history's great disappearances, likely lies in a combination of these pressures. A changing climate may have stressed their agricultural system, leading to food shortages and social tension. That tension could have made them more vulnerable to fragmentation, and if, in this weakened state, novel illnesses arrived, the result could have been catastrophic. Their story is a poignant reminder that no civilization, no matter how ingeniously designed, exists in a bubble. It is subject to the whims of the atmosphere, the fragility of the body, and the complexities of the human heart. Their disappearance adds a profound layer of meaning to the laser scans. We are not just mapping a lost city, we are reading the final chapter of a human epic, a testament to both breathtaking achievement and profound vulnerability. In their fall, we see a mirror for our own world, a lesson in the delicate balance required to sustain a complex society on a changing planet. The Casarabe metropolis was just the beginning. Across the Amazon basin, from the dense rainforests of Brazil to the misty highlands of Guatemala, LiDAR is systematically revealing a hidden human past on a scale that is rewriting textbooks. What once looked like untouched wilderness is now, through the laser's eye, emerging as a vast, interconnected tapestry of ancient engineering. Take the Brazilian state of Acre, for example. For decades, hundreds of mysterious geometric earthworks, known locally as geoglyphs, dotted the landscape. On the ground, they appeared as shallow ditches forming perfect circles, squares, and octagons, often over 300 meters across. They were puzzling, isolated curiosities, but when LiDAR scanned the region, it revealed these were not isolated sites at all. They were linked by straight, sunken roads, forming a complex network of ceremonial pathways that connected communities across the forest. These were not just symbols in the dirt, they were part of a planned, ritual landscape, evidence of a society with shared beliefs and the organizational power to enact them over immense distances. Further north, in the upper Tapajos Basin, lasers unveiled something even more startling: vast urban layouts that mirror the Casarabe's sophistication. Researchers discovered densely packed clusters of monumental platforms, plazas, and straight roads arranged in a distinct sunburst pattern. The settlements were surrounded by deep ditches and tall palisades, speaking to a need for defense and a clearly defined community space. The scale of Earth moved here is almost incomprehensible, suggesting a population that managed and transformed its environment with deliberate, large-scale planning. And the story extends beyond the Amazon rainforest proper. In the Maya region of Guatemala, a LiDAR survey of the dense Patane jungle uncovered a staggering revelation: not a few lost temples, but an entire metropolitan landscape. The scans showed over 60,000 previously unknown structures, houses, palaces, fortifications, and raised causeways, all hidden beneath the canopy. This was not a scattered collection of city-states, but a continuous, densely populated region with a capacity for agriculture and infrastructure that far exceeded previous estimates. The implications are seismic. These are not separate, unrelated discoveries. They are data points on a new map of the ancient Americas. A pattern is coming into sharp focus, one that shows large-scale, sophisticated societies were not the rare exception, but were flourishing across the tropics. The old model that placed the cradles of civilization solely in the arid river valleys of Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the high Andes is crumbling. The Amazon, and the neotropical world as a whole, is now being recognized as a cradle of civilization in its own right, one that developed a completely different, yet equally brilliant blueprint for urban life. Instead of stone pyramids, they built with earth and living plants. Instead of conquering deserts with irrigation, they mastered flooded forests with raised fields and canals. Their monument was not a single temple, but the entire managed landscape. This wave of discovery does not diminish the achievements of other ancient cultures. It vastly expands the canvas of human ingenuity. It tells us that across the Americas, people were solving the profound challenges of their environments in astonishingly creative ways, building complex societies that lived in dynamic balance with some of the most biologically intense places on Earth. Each laser scan is like turning on a light in a dark room we thought was empty, only to find the walls covered in magnificent, intricate murals. The question now is not whether these societies existed, but how they spoke to one another, what they believed, and what their ultimate legacy means for the world we inhabit today. This revelation fundamentally rewrites the origin story of the rainforest itself. For generations, the dominant narrative was clear. The Amazon encountered by European explorers was seen as a pristine wilderness, a timeless, untouched cathedral of nature. This idea, often called the pristine myth, suggested that humans were merely recent visitors in an ancient, self-contained ecosystem. The laser scans shatter that myth with overwhelming geometric clarity. The evidence carved into the earth reveals a profound truth. The Amazon is not, and has not been, a virgin forest for thousands of years. It is a domesticated landscape. This is not a small adjustment. It is a complete philosophical shift in how we see one of the planet's most vital places. Instead of a wilderness that exists apart from humanity, we must now see it as a garden, a vast, living testament to ancient human intervention and care. The Casarabe and cultures like them were not passive inhabitants. They were active gardeners on a continental scale, selectively planting useful trees, enriching soils, and directing water flows to create a more productive and predictable environment. The very composition of the forest we see today, with its surprising abundance of fruit and nut trees like Brazil nut and cocoa, may be a direct legacy of their long-term cultivation. The forest is not just a natural ecosystem, it is a historical archive, its roots tangled with the fingerprints of its first caretakers. This reframing carries immense weight for our modern world, especially for conservation. The old model of preservation often hinged on the idea of separating humans from nature, of creating untouched reserves. But if the Amazon's legendary biodiversity actually co-evolved alongside human management for millennia, that model becomes problematic. It suggests that human presence and ecological richness are not inherently opposed. In fact, sustainable human intervention might have been a key ingredient in creating the complex, hyper-diverse tapestry we now strive to protect. This does not justify modern deforestation, far from it. Instead, it points toward a more nuanced and potentially more effective path for conservation, one that learns from ancient practices. It argues for partnering with indigenous communities, the descendants of those first forest gardeners, who hold deep, generational knowledge of how to live within the Amazon's rhythms without breaking them. The challenge before us is not to restore a wilderness that never existed, but to understand and honor the delicate, cultivated balance that did, and to find our own way to become stewards rather than conquerors of this irreplaceable world. The laser scans do more than reveal ancient roads, they trace a living connection to the present. Every geometric form emerging from the data is not just an archaeological site, it is a chapter in a family history that never truly ended. The descendants of the people who shaped this landscape are still here, living in and around the Amazon, carrying forward knowledge and traditions that stretch back through the centuries. This reality places a profound ethical responsibility on the shoulders of modern discovery. How do we approach a lost city when its builders' grandchildren are our neighbors? The old model of archaeology, where outsiders would arrive, excavate, and remove artifacts to distant museums, is increasingly seen as incomplete, even harmful. It treated vibrant cultures as extinct subjects of study, rather than as living partners in understanding their own past. Today, a more collaborative and respectful framework is essential. This means that from the very beginning, research projects are built in partnership with indigenous communities. Their consent is not a formality, it is a foundational requirement. Their knowledge is not anecdotal, it is a crucial dataset. Elders and community historians often hold oral traditions, place names, and understandings of plant use that can provide context no laser can ever detect. A story passed down about why a certain causeway points toward a mountain, or a ceremonial practice linked to a specific reservoir, can transform a map feature into a meaningful cultural landscape. This collaborative approach ensures that discoveries are shared in ways the community chooses, that interpretations are accurate and respectful, and that any benefits from educational opportunities to tourism management flow back to the descendants. It shifts the dynamic from one of extraction to one of dialogue. The goal is no longer to simply unveil secrets for the world to see, but to support communities in reclaiming and retelling their own deep history. This is about more than ethics, it is about better science and deeper truth. When indigenous voices guide the research, we get a fuller, richer picture of the past, one that honors the intellect and spirit of the people who created it. Protecting this heritage then becomes a shared mission. Instead of outsiders fencing off a site, local communities can become its most passionate and knowledgeable guardians, integrating its protection into their stewardship of the living forest. This collaborative path recognizes that the Megalopolis is not a ruin to be owned, but a legacy to be cared for, a bridge between an astonishing past and a resilient present. It asks us to listen as much as we look, understanding that the final word on this lost world belongs rightfully to those who never really lost it at all. The success in Bolivia was not an ending but a blueprint. It proved a powerful method for seeing the unseen, and now that blueprint is being taken to new maps in search of other stories the Earth has kept hidden. The next great frontiers for this technology are the world's other vast, dense tropical forests, places where the canopy has guarded history just as fiercely as it did in the Amazon. One of the most tantalizing targets is the Congo Basin in Central Africa. Its immense rainforest, second only to the Amazon in size, holds similar mysteries. Local histories and scattered archaeological finds hint at complex societies, like the kingdoms that arose around the Great Congo River, but the sheer scale and inaccessibility of the terrain have left huge gaps in our understanding. A systematic LiDAR survey there could reveal ancient settlement patterns, trade routes, and earthworks on a scale we can barely guess at, potentially rewriting the pre-colonial history of a continent. Southeast Asia is another prime candidate. The jungles of Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar are known to conceal the remnants of the sprawling Khmer Empire beyond the famous temples of Angkor. Preliminary LiDAR flights there have already revealed extensive urban grids and water management systems around known sites, suggesting entire cities are still waiting to be found beneath the green blanket. Even the dense rainforests of Central America, beyond the Maya region, hold promise for revealing the full extent of cultures we currently know only from isolated ceremonial centers. The potential is staggering, a global hunt for lost worlds conducted from the sky. The tools for this hunt are themselves evolving rapidly. The next generation of LiDAR technology promises even greater revelations. Sensors are becoming more powerful, capable of firing denser clouds of laser pulses. This higher resolution means they can detect smaller and subtler features, perhaps individual post holes for ancient houses, faint footpaths, or the outlines of garden plots, bringing the daily life of these civilizations into sharper focus than ever before. But the real game changer lies not just in collection, but in interpretation. The volume of data from a single survey is colossal, often comprising billions of individual points. Sorting through this digital haystack to find the needles of human construction is a monumental task. This is where artificial intelligence is stepping in. Researchers are now training AI algorithms to recognize the signatures of human activity within LiDAR data. These systems can learn to automatically identify the straight lines of a causeway, the geometric shape of a platform, or the organized pattern of residential mounds, scanning thousands of square kilometers in a fraction of the time it would take a human analyst. This AI-assisted analysis does not replace the archaeologist. It empowers them, freeing them from endless data sorting to focus on the bigger questions of meaning and connection. It allows for the rapid comparison of sites across entire regions, revealing cultural patterns and influences that would otherwise remain invisible. We stand at the threshold of what can only be called a new golden age of exploration. The age of sailing ships to find new continents is past, but the age of discovery is far from over. It has simply changed its medium from wood and sail to lasers and algorithms. The promise is the systematic unveiling of a hidden human planet. We are likely to find not just one more lost city, but networks of them. We will discover more vast road systems connecting cultures we thought were separate. We will map agricultural landscapes that fed millions, revealing ancient solutions to food security that might inform our own future. Each new scan has the potential to add another piece to the grand puzzle of our shared human story, demonstrating again and again that where we saw only wilderness, there was once careful, creative, and complex life. The forests of the world are archives, and we have just learned how to read them. The next chapter of this story is not written in books, but in light reflected back from the silent earth, waiting for us to finally see it. The same lasers that unveil ancient cities are quietly reshaping our modern world. While we marvel at the lost megalopolis, this technology is not locked in the past. The very principles of LiDAR, sending out pulses of light to measure distance and build a precise three-dimensional map, are at work in fields that touch our daily lives. In forestry management, planes equipped with LiDAR fly over vast timberlands. The data they collect does far more than just count trees. It allows foresters to measure canopy height, density, and biomass with incredible accuracy, helping to monitor forest health, plan sustainable harvests, and even assess wildfire risk by understanding the fuel load on the forest floor. This is conservation and industry guided by the same kind of detailed landscape vision that reveals ancient causeways. On our roads, the push toward autonomous vehicles leans heavily on this technology. Self-driving cars use a compact form of LiDAR as their eyes, constantly scanning the environment in a 360-degree radius. It detects pedestrians, cyclists, other vehicles, and road edges in real time, building an instantaneous map that allows the vehicle's brain to navigate safely. Every time a prototype car navigates a busy street, it is using a descendant of the tool that found a city beneath the trees. Then there is the critical work of planning for natural disasters. Governments and engineers use LiDAR to create hyper-accurate elevation models of coastlines and floodplains. By understanding the exact lay of the land, they can predict how storm surges will flow, where floodwaters will pool, and which communities are most at risk. This allows for smarter urban planning, the design of better levees and drainage systems, and ultimately the protection of lives and property. Even the design of our cities benefits. Urban planners use LiDAR scans to model where new buildings will cast shadows, to analyze traffic patterns, and to integrate new infrastructure seamlessly into the existing landscape. This parallel is where the story finds a beautiful symmetry. The tool that is helping us build a safer, more efficient future is the very same key that is unlocking the secrets of our deepest past. It is a profound reminder that innovation rarely has just one purpose. A technology developed for surveying and mapping does not care about the age of what it maps. It simply reveals the truth of the terrain, whether that terrain is a 21st century highway or a 1,000-year-old road buried for centuries. This connection underscores the interdisciplinary power of human curiosity. The drive to measure, to map, and to understand our environment fuels both archaeological discovery and modern engineering. LiDAR serves as a bridge across time, proving that the tools we create to shape tomorrow can also, quite literally, illuminate the worlds we thought we had lost forever. This brings us back to the Amazon with a renewed perspective. We have seen the scale of the civilization and the power of the tool that found it. But to truly grasp its significance, we must confront the most persistent myth of all, the idea that this discovery is an isolated anomaly in an otherwise empty wilderness. The raw data from the laser scans is not a picture but a constellation. It arrives as a point cloud, a swirling digital galaxy of millions, sometimes billions, of individual dots suspended in three-dimensional space. Each dot is a precise coordinate, a tiny record of where a single laser pulse hit something and bounced back. To the untrained eye, it looks like abstract digital noise, a grayish blizzard on a computer screen. But within that chaos lies the blueprint of a lost world. The next stage of the journey moves from the sky into the digital lab, where archaeologists and visual artists become translators, turning this numeric poetry into a story we can see and feel. Their first task is one of meticulous separation. Using specialized software, they begin the process of classification, instructing the computer to sort the points based on their properties. Points that returned quickly with a strong signal likely hit the very top of the canopy. Points that took a bit longer might have penetrated through leaves to a lower branch. The crucial points, the ones that took the longest journey, are those that finally struck the solid ground. By filtering out all the returns from vegetation, the artists digitally strip away the forest. What remains is the ground model, a breathtakingly clean topographic map of the Earth's naked surface, free from trees for the first time in centuries. This is the moment the city's skeleton emerges from the soil, but a skeleton is not yet a body. The next step is interpretation and artistry. The clean ground data reveals the shapes, but the human eye and archaeological knowledge must bring them to life. Artists use the elevation data to apply realistic textures, simulating the look of packed earth, grassy mounds, and reflective water in the ancient reservoirs. They carefully reconstruct the probable slopes of the pyramids and the flat expanse of the plazas based on the laser's exact measurements. Lighting is added, simulating the sun's path across the sky, casting shadows that define the depth of a causeway or the height of a platform. The result is a photorealistic, navigable three-dimensional model. With a few clicks, a researcher or anyone with access can virtually stand in the center of a vast, empty plaza, looking up at the imposing bulk of a ceremonial mound. They can follow the straight line of a causeway as it disappears toward the horizon, or hover above the entire landscape like a bird, grasping the interconnected web of roads and fields in a single glance. This is more than a pretty animation, it is a fundamental research tool. It allows archaeologists to test theories about sightlines between structures, to calculate the volume of earth moved to build a platform, or to simulate how water would have flowed through the canal network. For the public, these visualizations perform a different kind of magic. They make the invisible past viscerally tangible. A map is an abstraction, but a three-dimensional model you can explore is an experience. It transforms statistics about population and scale into a sensory understanding of space, order, and human ambition. It allows us to walk virtually in the footsteps of the Casarabe, to appreciate the monumental perspective from the top of their platforms, and to finally comprehend the sheer audacity of their urban vision. This digital resurrection bridges a gap of centuries, turning cold data into a shared journey of discovery, and preparing us to ask the most intimate question of all: what was it actually like to call this engineered masterpiece home? Their engineered world was not an isolated marvel, but part of a much larger story of human ingenuity. To truly grasp the scale of the Casarabe's achievement, we must place them on a global stage, alongside the other great city builders of the ancient world who also mastered their challenging environments. Consider the magnificent city of Angkor in Cambodia, the heart of the Khmer Empire. Like the Amazonian metropolis, Angkor was a sprawling, low-density urban landscape, a network of temples, reservoirs, and neighborhoods spread across hundreds of square kilometers. The Khmer engineers faced a monsoon climate with intense seasonal flooding followed by a long dry period. Their brilliant solution was a vast, grid-like system of reservoirs called barrays and a complex network of canals. This hydraulic system captured monsoon rains to irrigate rice paddies throughout the year, ensuring food security for a massive population. The parallel to the Casarabe's reservoirs and canals is striking, both civilizations reshaping water from a threat into a life-giving resource. Yet the challenges differed. In the Amazon, the soil was poor and the challenge was elevating and enriching it. In Cambodia, the soil was fertile, but water distribution was the key. Both societies, however, shared a fundamental insight that to build a great city, you must first master the water. Then look to the Maya cities of Mesoamerica, like Tikal or Caracol, hidden within dense tropical forests. The Maya, too, built immense ceremonial platforms and plazas, centers of spiritual and political power that anchored their urban networks. They constructed causeways known as Symbiotic to connect their cities across the rugged landscape. Their agricultural innovations, like terraced hillsides and managed forest gardens, allowed them to thrive in an environment that was not naturally suited for large-scale farming. This echoes the Casarabe's raised fields and domesticated forest, another example of turning ecological constraints into opportunities. What sets the Amazonian achievement apart, however, is the sheer scale of earth moved in a landscape without stone. The Maya built with limestone, the Khmer with laterite and sandstone. The Casarabe's entire world, their pyramids, their roads, their homes, were sculpted from earth alone. Their monument was the landscape itself. This comparison does not diminish any of these cultures. It illuminates a shared human brilliance. Across continents and climates, ancient societies independently arrived at similar solutions: urban planning on a grand scale, sophisticated water management, and agriculture that fed millions. The Casarabe, long absent from this conversation, now demand their seat at the table. Their discovery forces us to expand our map of where civilization could flourish. It was not just in the deserts along great rivers or on high mountain plateaus, but here, in the very heart of the world's greatest rainforest. They prove that human creativity, when faced with the jungle's immense challenge, could respond with an artistry of earth and water that stands as a peer to the stone wonders of the world. The Vanos de Mojos was not a simple, uniform jungle. It was a dynamic patchwork of flooded savannas and forest islands, a landscape that breathed with the seasons. For half the year, torrential rains would transform the vast plains into a shallow inland sea, a shimmering expanse of water that could stretch to the horizon. Then the dry season would arrive, and that same sea would retreat, leaving behind sun-baked earth and shrinking waterways. This was the rhythm of life, a powerful and predictable pulse that presented both a profound challenge and a unique opportunity. The Casarabe did not see this cycle as an obstacle to overcome, but as the fundamental score upon which they would compose their civilization. Every single feature of their city was a note in that composition, a direct and elegant response to the land's own voice. The raised causeways were not just roads, they were terrestrial bridges, keeping travel and trade flowing above the seasonal floods. The canals were not just ditches, they were the circulatory system of a managed wetland, directing the life-giving water where it was needed and storing it for the parched months ahead. And the vast grids of raised fields, those artificial islands of fertile soil, were the masterstroke. They lifted precious crops above the waterline, while the surrounding canals provided irrigation, nutrient-rich sediment, and even a means of transportation by canoe. This was not a fight against nature, it was a deep and sustained collaboration. The city's very form emerged from a conversation with water, earth, and season. It shows us that for the Casarabe, the environment was not a backdrop but a partner. Their architecture was hydrological engineering, their urban planning was ecosystem management, and their agriculture was a form of long-term ecological sculpture. This redefines what we mean by a city. We often think of ancient metropolises as places of stone that stand apart from the natural world, imposing human order upon it. But here, the city was the landscape, and the landscape was the city. The distinction blurred into harmony. Their success for nearly 1,000 years stands as a testament to the sustainability of that partnership. They flourished not by extracting from their world until it was exhausted, but by integrating with its rhythms, by listening to the land and building a society that amplified its productivity. This offers a powerful, almost poetic contrast to our modern narrative of development. It presents an alternative model of civilization, one built on adaptation rather than domination, on symbiosis rather than separation. Their silent, earthen city asks us a quiet but urgent question about our own place in the world. Can we, too, learn to build not just on the land but with it? Long before a single laser pulse pierced the canopy, the forest was already telling its story. The idea of a great, hidden city in the Amazon was not born in a laboratory, but in the living memory of the people who have always called it home. For countless generations, indigenous communities across the basin have passed down rich oral histories, stories that speak of ancestral homelands, of powerful chiefs who lived in grand settlements, and of a time when the land was shaped by many hands. These were not vague fantasies, but detailed narratives tied to specific rivers, mountains, and clearings, a map of memory drawn in spoken word. They spoke of a past of greater abundance and organization, a truth held not in stone tablets, but in the careful retelling from elder to child. This deep, local knowledge formed one stream of the legend. The other stream flowed from the outside world, fueled by the dreams and obsessions of explorers who heard fragments of these stories and wove them into their own quests. The most famous of these was the British explorer Percy Fawcett. In the early 20th century, Fawcett became fixated on finding what he called the lost city of Z, a magnificent ancient metropolis he believed lay hidden in the unmapped Brazilian jungle. He was driven by a mix of colonial-era romanticism, misinterpreted historical documents, and those tantalizing indigenous accounts. Fawcett's final, vanishing expedition in 1925 turned his quest into one of exploration's greatest mysteries, cementing the idea of a lost Amazonian city in the global imagination, though as a perilous and likely fictional grail. For decades, mainstream science viewed both the indigenous stories and tales like Fawcett's with deep skepticism. They were charming folklore or tragic delusions, but not history. The LiDAR maps have now performed a quiet revolution. They did not discover El Dorado or the literal city of Z, but they did something far more profound. They revealed that the core concept behind these legends, the existence of large-scale, sophisticated societies in the deep Amazon, was not a myth at all. The geometric causeways and vast platforms provide the physical, scientific evidence for a reality that oral traditions had preserved for centuries. This is where science and story perform a beautiful dance. The laser scans give form to the ancient whispers. A legend about a chief's great house now has the echo of a 20-meter-tall platform mound. A story of long, straight spirit paths finds its counterpart in the engineered causeways that run for miles. The discovery validates the essential truth held within the folklore, not in its every specific detail, but in its foundational premise that this land once nurtured something grand. It is a powerful reminder that human knowledge takes many forms. Written records are one way, but the spoken tradition is another, a resilient vessel that can carry the essence of history across vast stretches of time, even when the physical evidence is swallowed by roots and soil. The Casarabe city is a message from the past, first carried on the breath of storytellers, and now confirmed by the cool light of technology. It teaches us to listen, for sometimes the most enduring maps are not made of paper, but of memory. The map on the screen is a promise, but the jungle demands proof. This is the critical leap from digital discovery to physical understanding, a phase archaeologists call ground truthing. After the awe of seeing the city rendered in lasers, teams must now do the hard, slow work of finding it with their own feet and hands. They take the precise coordinates from the LiDAR model and plot a course into the living, breathing, and often impenetrable rainforest. The logistical challenge is immense. Reaching these remote sites can require days of travel by boat, truck, and finally on foot, cutting paths through dense undergrowth with machetes, navigating swampy terrain, and facing the constant hum of insects and the watchful presence of the forest's wildlife. It is a test of endurance where the clean lines of the digital map meet the messy, tangled reality of the Earth. The goal is to reach a specific point, a small square on the grid where the scans showed an anomaly, perhaps the corner of a platform or the edge of a causeway. There they will lay out an excavation unit, a precise square cut into the soil, and begin the meticulous process of digging down layer by layer to see what the Earth has kept safe. The moment of validation is profound. A researcher's trowel scrapes away centuries of accumulated soil, And there, exactly at the depth and location the remote sensing predicted, a fragment of pottery emerges. It might be a piece of a cooking vessel, its curved surface decorated with a geometric pattern that matches styles found elsewhere in the region. This is not just an artifact, it is a conversation across time. The laser said something was here, built by human hands, and now, held in the hand, is the tangible proof. Each shard of ceramic, each layer of charcoal from an ancient hearth, each seed or tool recovered adds a line of text to the story the LiDAR map only outlined. These physical objects allow for scientific dating, using methods like radiocarbon analysis on organic materials, which can pin the construction and occupation of the site to specific centuries. The artifacts speak to daily life, economy, and trade, revealing what people ate, how they cooked, and what they valued. Ground truthing transforms the stunning visual of a lost city into a rich, multidimensional history. It confirms that the shapes on the screen are not natural formations, but the remains of a lived-in world. The real truth, as always in archaeology, does not float in the air, it waits patiently in the soil. This revelation transforms our very definition of wilderness. The Amazon we are fighting to save is not a museum of untouched nature, but a living garden with a deep human history. This understanding carries profound implications for how we approach conservation in the 21st century. It introduces a powerful concept, the anthropogenic forest. This term describes an ecosystem where ancient human activity did not destroy biodiversity, but actively enhanced it. Think of the Casarabe and their contemporaries not as clear-cutters, but as masterful landscape gardeners. By creating mosaics of different environments, they inadvertently built a richer world. Their raised fields and canals added edges and open water, habitats that attract different species than a closed canopy forest. Their managed orchards of fruit and nut trees increased the variety of food sources available for wildlife. The very act of enriching soils and directing water flows created pockets of unusual fertility where a wider range of plants could thrive. Over centuries, these practices woven into the land's fabric actually boosted the variety of life, creating the hyper-diverse tapestry we marvel at today. This turns a key assumption of traditional conservation on its head. The goal is not necessarily to restore a pristine state that never existed, but to understand and maintain the cultivated balance that did. This perspective strongly argues for conservation strategies that are informed by this deep history. It means partnering with, not displacing, the indigenous communities who are the inheritors of this ancient landscape knowledge. Their traditional practices of agroforestry, selective harvesting, and fire management are not primitive, but are often refined techniques for maintaining biodiversity that have been tested over millennia. A conservation model that excludes these communities risks preserving an incomplete and perhaps less resilient version of the forest. Instead, the past offers a compelling blueprint. It shows that human presence and ecological richness can be partners, not enemies. The challenge for modern conservationists, then, is to integrate this long-term view. It means designing protected areas that allow for sustainable, culturally informed use, recognizing that human stewardship can be a vital part of the ecosystem's health. It means supporting economic models based on the forest's standing value, like harvesting Brazil nuts or sustainable rubber, rather than clearing it for short-term gain. The lost city beneath the trees is more than an archaeological wonder. It is a testament to a possible future. It proves that a complex society can flourish within the Amazon without breaking it, by learning its language and nurturing its abundance. Our task is not to freeze the rainforest in time, but to listen to the lessons it has been holding for 1,000 years, and to write a new chapter of partnership guided by the wisdom of the first gardeners. The laser scans are not just showing us a city, they are changing the very nature of the search. For over a century, archaeology in places like the Amazon was a slow, intimate art. It meant choosing a promising mound, clearing the vegetation, and digging down with meticulous care. This method was, and remains, essential for uncovering the fine details of daily life, the artifacts and hearths that tell personal stories. But it had a fundamental limitation, like trying to understand an entire novel by reading only a single, random page. You might learn about a character or an event, but you would miss the plot, the setting, and the connections that give the story its true meaning. The discovery was confined to the scale of the trench. Now, LiDAR has expanded our vision from the trench to the territory. It allows us to read the entire novel at once, to see how every page connects. We are no longer just excavating sites, we are mapping civilizations. This is the paradigm shift, a fundamental change in perspective that is reshaping our entire understanding of the human past. It moves us from a focus on isolated points to a comprehension of vast networks. We can now ask questions that were previously impossible. Instead of wondering what happened in one village, we can ask how 100 villages were organized and connected. We can trace the flow of goods and ideas along those straight causeways. We can calculate the total food production of an engineered landscape and estimate the population it sustained. This technology is, in a very real sense, democratizing discovery. It is no longer solely the domain of the intrepid explorer who happens to stumble upon the right mound. A systematic aerial survey can now reveal the hidden structure of an entire region, providing a data-driven starting point that guides ground teams with unprecedented precision. It allows researchers from different disciplines, from ecologists to climatologists to anthropologists, to work from the same foundational map, weaving their insights into a richer, more holistic tapestry. The framework for the past is not being gently adjusted, it is being actively rebuilt. The old model of history, which often placed complex societies only in certain cradles and saw the tropics as passive backdrops, is crumbling. In its place, a new, more vibrant and more accurate story is emerging, one that recognizes the profound and creative ways humans have shaped and been shaped by every corner of our planet. This shift forces a thrilling, humbling realization. We have only just begun to see the true scale of our own history. The lasers have given us more than a map, they have given us a new beginning for history itself. This discovery does not simply add another chapter to the textbook, it demands we rewrite the table of contents. The Casarabe Metropolis and the others now emerging from the data stand as undeniable proof that the human capacity for complex civilization is not bound by geography or environment. It blossomed in river valleys, on mountain plateaus, and, as we now know, in the very heart of the world's greatest rainforest. This revelation is a profound correction to a long-held narrative, one that had confined the story of human achievement to a few select regions. It expands the stage upon which our collective past was performed, making it wider, richer, and far more diverse than we ever allowed ourselves to believe. By challenging the pristine myth, this finding does more than alter archaeology. It reshapes our entire relationship with the natural world. The Amazon is not a wilderness we entered, but a home we helped cultivate, a partnership between human ingenuity and ecological abundance that lasted for 1,000 years. Their legacy is not in ruined stone, but in the living forest itself, in the enriched soils and the patterns of trees that still bear the fingerprints of ancient gardeners. This understanding transforms conservation from an act of separation into a practice of partnership, guided by the deep-time wisdom of those who first learned the language of the land. The true power of this story lies in its demonstration of human potential. The Casarabe were master engineers without quarries, urban planners without written blueprints, and agricultural scientists who turned flooding wetlands into a perpetual breadbasket. Their achievement is a testament to observation, adaptation, and communal vision. It shows us that sustainability is not a modern invention, but an ancient, proven principle. Their city did not fall because they exhausted their world, but likely because forces beyond their intricate balance, like shifting climate or unseen illness, overwhelmed their resilient design. In their endurance and in their vulnerability, we see a reflection of our own time. The laser scans that unveiled this hidden world are far more than a tool for looking back. They are a key, and we have only just begun to turn it in the lock. As this technology sweeps across the Congo Basin, the jungles of Southeast Asia, and other dense forests, we stand on the threshold of a new age of discovery. Each survey flight carries the potential to reveal another lost network, another testament to human creativity waiting beneath the canopy. We are mapping a hidden human planet, and every new outline that emerges from the data asks us to question what else we have missed, what other stories we have yet to learn. Let this discovery be an enduring inspiration to remain curious, to look at familiar landscapes with new eyes, and to always question the stories we think we know. Our past is far more surprising, ingenious, and interconnected than we ever imagined. If this journey into a lost world has sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear your thoughts. What other secrets do you believe might still lie hidden, waiting for their own key to be found?